This episode of the Lunch with Chris show is brought to you by my upcoming book, 30 Days to Limitless. You can find out more about it at limitless30.com.
This podcast is certified fresh. Freshmediaworks.com.
Welcome to Lunch with Chris. We're your host, Chris Daly, brings you uplifting interviews with extraordinary individuals making a positive impact. Join as he introduces remarkable people who have left their mark on their respective fields.
Have you ever thought about doing your own podcast? It is the absolute best way to grow your brand, spread your message, and build your following. Fresh Media Works can help. We do all the heavy lifting, and you just focus on your message. To find out how easy we can make launching your new podcast, call 713-269-4620 or check us out at freshmediaworks.com.
Today I have a special treat. I will be talking with an author who has been very influential in my career. Yes, I will be talking with Jeffrey Gitomer, the king of sales. All right, everybody join me in welcoming the one, the only Jeffrey Gitomer to the show. Jeffrey, how are you today?
I'm fine, Chris, and yourself?
I'm doing wonderful.
I'm fine. How are you? Is the boring introduction that bad writers use.
I love it. That's what I love about you is you're very frank.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean? When you wrote in high school or in grade school, then they said, write a letter to your grandmom. Hi, grandmom. How are you? I am fine. That's how they all start.
I love it. I'm learning every day.
Cool.
So let's back up. Tell me where you grew up.
I was born in Florida, West Palm Beach, Florida, but because both my parents were in the Second World War. Mm-hmm. And then we moved immediately to New Jersey, which is where I grew up. I grew up in Atlantic City, moved for a little bit to Woodbury, then moved to Haddonfield. And when the Jews made their mass migration from Camden to Cherry Hill, we moved from Haddonfield to Cherry Hill.
Nice.
And then I lived in another city called Mount Ephraim. And then finally I moved away. I moved to Florida. Oh, no, I moved to Clementon, and then I moved to Florida. So I grew up in South Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia.
Right.
And I don't know whether you know Philadelphia or not, but fuck you is a greeting, and everybody wants a bribe. and then if you go to New York City to sell, it's even worse.
Nice. Well, growing up a Cowboy fan, we've learned a lot about Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you have. Yeah, we hate your guts. But it's universal.
Right, right.
The best line ever in the history of sports was said by Buddy Ryan when Jimmy Johnson coached the Cowboys the first year. And I think they were like 0-16 or 1-15 or something like that.
Yeah.
And after we crushed you twice, Buddy Ryan said in an interview, somebody better tell Jimmy Johnson that East Carolina is not on the schedule anymore.
I love that. I love that. And I remember that season.
Just a great line. And now you are dominant in your division, and we bit the bullet. We're horrible now. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Playoffs.
Anyway, actually, you've had some pretty good teams, but that's largely in part to all the Texas high school football players you have.
Oh, my gosh. Give me that break. Actually, this year's team was largely in part from the Georgia National Championship team.
Nice. Talk to me about how you got into writing, because from what I understand, listening to podcasts and some of your book intros, it was about writing for a newspaper, right?
Yeah, let me give you just a 2-sentence background. My parents were very smart. So I was born with brains, and then I had to decide how I was going to take advantage of them.
Nice.
And my dad and my brother, I have a younger brother, and my dad, who was obviously older, were great writers because they didn't use adverbs. They didn't mince words at all. Well, and so I looked at, they were like my model for writing. And one day I read a column in Business Monday in the Charlotte Observer about some sales expert who asked questions of the readers, and they said, answer these questions and interactive. And he said, and in the next Business Monday, I'm going to publish the answers. And the answers were not only wrong, they were ridiculous. And so I called the Observer and I said, not only are you so stupid, did you believe what this idiot told you, but now you've published them and thousands of your readers have wrong information. And so they came over to my house, and the next Business Monday was on me and my philosophy. And the guy who wrote about it, I read it. I go, this guy's not a very good writer. I said, I'm a better writer than this guy. So I go to the Observer and say, I want to write a column on sales, a weekly column on sales. And the woman who's in charge of the Business Monday said, no, we don't have outside writers. You'll make too much money. I said, no, I'll do it for free. She said, no, the notoriety. I said, so what you're saying to me is you don't really care what the reader gets. You only care how I benefit. Do I have that straight?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I said, look, I just want to write a weekly column on selling skills. And the woman had the audacity to say, it'll never happen. And I said, and I had to use a euphemism. I said, no, sweetie, it'll never happen here. And I left and I went around the corner to the Business Journal where I had a relationship with them. I was publishing new business leads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I meet in the middle of the street, the publisher of the Business Journal, as I'm walking across 4th Street to go in, and he's walking across 4th Street to go out. And he looks at me and he goes, what the F were you doing in the Observer? I said, oh, they had this column, I told him the whole story. He goes, you have time for a cup of coffee? I go, sure. So we sit in this coffee place, and he said, 30% of our readers are salespeople, and we don't do anything for them. I said, why don't I write a weekly column on selling skills? Okay, so if you think there's no God, listen to this. As we're talking, the people who turned me down walked by our booth. And so the moral lesson is, when someone tells you never, tell them that means at least not for 20 minutes.
Right. I love that.
And that's the process. And so I started writing for the Business Journal, and I got into about 100 other business journals, and that literally launched my career. Literally.
That's awesome. When you started to tell the story, I thought this was going to be a Wally Pipp story where you just replaced the guy.
No.
Went on to be the Iron Horse.
No one knows who Wally Pipp is, but okay, it's good. No, so, he's the guy that Lou Gehrig replaced.
Replaced, yeah, right. Yeah. But instead, it's a free agent story where you walked across the street and.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
But the challenge of that is I look at serendipity as God's way of remaining anonymous.
Yeah.
And if you understand that, then you understand life.
Yeah. Cool. And then what was the first book?
The first book was the Sales Bible. That came out, and all it was 100 columns.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a column every week, and after my second or third column, I said, if I write 100 of these, I got a book.
Yeah.
And so I never wrote a book. I just wrote a column. Pretty interesting how the whole thing evolved, but it worked. And I got a New York City contract, and I was off to the races.
Off to the races. Yeah, I was going to say, I tell people that I help start podcasts that, look, if you transcribe your podcast, at the end of a year, you've got a book.
Yeah, sometimes.
Right. Depending on the podcast.
In the National Speakers Association, there's a sort of an underlying theme that if you take your speech and put it into a transcript, that you have enough for a book. And I gave a talk to the foundation of the institute, of the association, and I said, let me explain something. Your speech ain't that good.
That's true.
And people were howling. But unfortunately, it's true. Yeah. Like, you have to have content that people want to read. You can't just have content. It has to be readable content, actionable content, a memorable content, something that someone's going to either retweet or post or something, so that you get some kind of a platform as a result of the words that you've written. And most people don't. Most people think if they tell, quote, their story, that's enough. It's like bullshit. It's not enough. Not even close to enough.
No. So then on the book writing, when did you add in the public speaking?
It came pretty much on accident. People read my stuff and they called me. Chris, I've done more than 2,500 corporate talks and public events.
Mm-hmm.
I've never made a sales call. I've never sent a postcard. I've never published anything saying, please call me to book a speech. They all call me first.
Nice.
Every single one of them, based on content.
Yeah.
Like people read it and they go, oh, this guy's pretty damn good. Maybe we should have him in our meeting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's the reason I reached out to you, because I consume all your content. Right, exactly.
I don't call anybody.
I love that. And what would you say for somebody who's new to Jeffrey Gitomer is the place to start?
I would start with a little gold book of yes attitude.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a good attitude, then nothing I write is going to affect you in any way. Like, this guy's an asshole. Well, I may be an asshole, but I'm a writer and you're not.
Right.
And millions of people have read my books and they haven't read yours. And I've written 17 of them and you haven't even got the first chapter done yet. So I think that there's an ability to create a mental picture of what you are capable of reading and turning into. And that's why I wrote the attitude book, because I feel like if you don't have a good attitude, you're going to be pissed off at everything and everyone.
Yeah.
It starts there. And from there, you can pick anything you want of mine and go to the next thing. If you're new at sales, I would go to the Sales Bible. If you have a kind of a background in sales, I would go to the Little Red Book of Selling. But there's also the Little Red Book of Sales Answers, and there's also the Little Green Book of Getting Your Way. I mean, there's all kinds of things written on the theme of personal development and sales.
Yeah, I loved it. I think I started with the Little Red Book of Selling, was the first one I found somewhere. And first, because it was literally a little red book, I was like, what the heck is that? And fell in love with the content. Small business, you have to do sales and everything. You can't be a boss, right? So what's the 30,000 foot most important thing they need to focus on?
Well, you have to make sales or your business is not going to thrive. And you have to be the chief salesperson so you understand what customers really want and how they benefit from what it is that you make. What people say that's a value proposition. I think those things are bullshit. There has to be a perceived value in the mind of the customer or they're not going to move forward. And that's huge. And then there has to be a perceived difference between you and the competitor, because people think, oh, I can get this 5 different places. Well, you can't. And then the third thing is there has to be social proof that somebody else has to say this guy's the greatest. So if you have perceived value, perceived difference, and social proof, you're going to win. So the key word is perceived.
Right.
And people leave that out. What's your value prop? I don't know who made it up. A marketing team of people?
Right.
Those people couldn't sell their way out of a wet paper bag.
In a world where there's millions of fake reviews out there, how do you get through that?
Don't worry about that. Just go get reviews.
Get real ones.
You can't worry about fake ones. There's nothing you can do about that.
Got it.
I tell people, salespeople, when you get a deck, like a slide deck from marketing, give it back to them, tell them to make 5 sales with it and report their findings. And that will separate marketing from sales literally forever.
Right.
It takes all the bullshit out.
And in the Jeffrey Gitomer no bullshit vernacular, how do you separate sales from marketing?
I think that for me personally, I think the salesperson has to be their own marketeer. They can give their stuff. Like if you go to make a sale and you've just sold a roof or siding, you stand outside the house with the customer and say, well, how'd it work out? Why did you choose me? And what happened as a result of it, and how proud of you. And all these things are social proof. You then send that to marketing and they rock with it. But if you rely on them to start marketing for you, you got a problem. because they're going to just be bragging about the company and how great it is and all the bullshit that goes with it. And people don't want brag. They want answers. They want real world confirmation that what you're saying is true, and a third party provides that proof.
Right.
So the salesperson has to be a marketeer along with marketing company, and that will help them win.
And what about, the cornerstone of all this is a salesperson has to believe in what they're selling.
Yep.
You see a lot of small business people who undervalue what they're selling and don't have that belief that it's worth what it's worth. How do they get that?
Well, you have to. The key word is belief. The first word is attitude.
Mm-hmm.
The second word is belief. If you believe that what you have is the best, and I tell people there's 5 parts of belief. You got to believe you have a great product, the greatest product in the world. You have to believe you work for a great company or you founded a great company. You have to believe you're a great person. You have to believe you can differentiate yourself from your competition, not compare yourself to them. And you have to believe in your heart that the customer is better off having purchased from you. You can't believe it in your head because that's the price. You have to believe it in your heart because that's the value.
Mm-hmm.
And if the owner of the company believes in his or her heart that this is the best product on the market, they're going to convey that. Their soul is going to be able to transfer that belief to the customer. If they think it's mediocre, well, we have a lot of competition. Bullshit. You don't have a lot of competition. You're a category of one if you have the best product. Ask Mercedes who their competition is. They're going to say nobody.
Right.
If you're the best, you don't have competition.
If you're coaching,
best, you're first loser.
Right. I love that saying. If you're coaching a small business, how do you get them to believe it? It's one thing to say you have to believe it, but do you tell them just quit, get out of the business?
Yeah, well, maybe they have to do that, but I'm going to start with a couple of why questions.
Okay.
Or what made you, rather than say why, because why is a tougher question. But what made you start this business? And that's the story that you have to convey. That you were pissed off about all the other poor products that were out there, and you decided you were going to make something better and provide better service or whatever it is that you're going to do. So you get down to why they did it. What was their motive to start? And then you add that word motive to the customer's desire to buy. Why do they want to buy this product, regardless if it's yours or not? And then why would they want to buy from you?
Got it.
I want to know those why questions or that what made you questions, and then I'm in good shape. I'll know how I have to go about my sales business. But if I don't know that, I'm just going to brag about myself that we're the greatest. We're not really interested right now.
Nice. And so how did you, or when did you decide to get into podcasting and talk about that transition?
Our studio guy at the time was podcasting for the Charlotte Hornets. And I saw what he was doing. I go, we got to do that. And we started doing it like sort of haphazardly. Mm-hmm. And one day he came and said, you got to stop screwing around with this and just take it seriously. You're either going to start to do a podcast on a regular basis or you're done. I'm done with it. So we decided to take it seriously, and we put out a podcast every week. And finally, we decided one day let's do every day. Let's do a short podcast every day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did that for about a year, but that got nuts. And so we stopped doing that. But now I'm more than 3 million downloads.
Nice.
You got to listen. We're like a real podcast. And I do them by myself now. I'll have a guest come on from someplace like you, and you'll be on our podcast. But I want to make sure that I'm giving valuable information to the audience.
Right.
So that's my own value proposition to myself. And so I'll pick somebody that I find interesting and interview them. And I interview people that are known and people that are unknown. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter to me if their content is interesting.
Right. I got you.
Perceived as valuable. But I love the podcast, and I actually have a course where I teach people how to podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, because most people don't know.
No, not at all. Yeah, that's true. So, a recent study came out a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that said the most trusted media people in the country are podcast hosts.
Well,
Talk about the value
let's
of
look
that.
at the reality of that.
Mm-hmm.
The media, there's no one in the media who you trust.
Right.
So podcasting is just the best of a poor lot. And the reason people like them is because they're real.
Exactly.
They in the Little Red Book, I have an intro letter, and it says I've cut one thing out of this book, all the bullshit. And same in podcasting. You don't have to be a pontification promoter of insincere data. People can spot that in 2 seconds and they'll click off.
Yeah.
But if you're good, people will not only will they click on, they'll remember the date and time that you go live, and they'll tell other people to join up.
Nice.
I'm going to be doing a podcast with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. In my little reading room here that I showed you earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I have a bunch of Napoleon Hill books on one shelf. An original first edition of Think and Grow Rich, but a more important book called How to Sell Your Way Through Life, which was published in 1939. And it, including my books, is the best sales book ever written.
Hmm.
So I'm going to do a podcast on that.
Nice.
And I'm going to add it to my Sell or Die, because the reason Sell or Die started is if you don't sell, you die.
Right.
So it's not like sell or don't sell. That's bullshit. Sell or die, that's a much more realistic approach to it. And people love it.
Oh, me too. Yeah, it's totally amazing. And I love the way you call your tribe diehards. That's so good.
And this is a very subtle thing. I refer to them individually. Diehard, if you're listening to this,
Yeah.
because no group is listening.
Right.
An individual is listening, and I address that person, not the whole group.
Excellent. Yeah, and talk,
powerful.
yeah, no, I agree completely. Your avatar is one person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk about some of the other online offerings you have, because you've got webinars, you've got all kinds of things.
I have a lot of stuff. I have online training that I do through Kajabi. The website has a lot of free material, but it's an attractor
Mm-hmm.
to generate business. People go to my website and then they hire me to do a speech for their company.
Yeah.
So there's motive to all of that. It's not just there to, well, I like giving away things. People are just, I'm a people person. They're just liars. They don't tell the truth about, like my website is there so that people will be attracted to buy from me.
Right.
Plain and simple. Same with my podcast. I want the podcast to be an attractor.
Yeah, no, it is. It definitely is. And you mentioned the Napoleon Hill stuff and sort of retelling his stuff in your podcast. One of the other books that I really love of yours is a little platinum book of Cha-Ching.
Yeah.
Talk about how that one, the idea for that one came about.
So I did work for a guy named Howard Lance at another company called Harris. And he became the CEO of NCR. And so I looked, NCR is a very famous company in selling.
Mm-hmm.
John Patterson, the founder, was literally the father of American salesmanship. And he didn't sell a cash register. Rather, he created the demand for a receipt.
Right.
Huge. And he was the first pull-through marketeer ever. Because he would, he'd say, demand a receipt, put it in newspaper ads, and women would come in and ask for a receipt, and the guy didn't have any, and then 3 days later, a salesman shows up and says, "You guys need receipts?" "Yeah, we do." And that sold 1 million cash registers in a 10-year period of time.
Yeah.
Think about that. So it's the only book I've ever done research on.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had to know what he did and how he did it. And so I have one of the shelves that I have here is the philosophy of John Patterson. and I have a cash register that I haven't put in the room yet because I don't really have a place for it. But I'm going to find a place and put the NCR cash register in here because I believe that unless you're ringing the register, you got a big problem.
Right on. I love that. And I just love the fact that there's no fluff in any conversation, any book that you put out.
I'm a no bullshit guy. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of the reasons I'm attracted to people like Dan Kennedy because they put it in their, the no BS process. But the challenge for anybody who's in sales is cut the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not here to sell you anything today. Seriously? Seriously? You're a liar. And people can feel that.
Yeah.
And then I tell salespeople, if I'm in a meeting, I'm doing a 3-day seminar in Charlotte at the end of January. There'll be about 60 people there because the price is high. And it's all about the perception that people have of salespeople. And it's all about assertive selling. And how do those people come into my class? They read my stuff and they're attracted to it. And that's the same way that anybody who's an entrepreneur has to do this. They have to create their own attraction. It is not the law of attraction. It's value attraction. People don't understand the law of attraction. It's like an undefinable thing. They wrote a book called The Secret, which says something along the lines of if you eat a bag of potato chips on your couch and you're overweight, a Cadillac will show up in your driveway. It will not. If you have the book The Secret, besides burning it, 2 words in the back of it: work hard.
Yeah, that's it.
Secret. Yeah.
That's it, exactly. So for people who are like struggling and trying to figure this stuff out, they get inundated with all these offers to learn and stuff online. Other than the obvious is, check out Jeffrey Gitomer. How can you help them sift through that?
Okay, so let's assume they work for a company.
Okay.
The first thing you do is you go visit 10 customers and discover why they bought. That will help you more than any training you could ever have. If you're working for yourself, then select your ideal customer and say, listen, I've selected you as my ideal customer. Would you mind if I gave you my product for free in exchange for a testimonial, if you like it?
Yeah.
And you have to do it in terms of the customer, not in terms of you. Because if you're not battling for that customer's mind and ultimately their wallet, you're barking up the wrong tree completely.
Got it. Good stuff. So that's awesome. I'm looking through your books here, and I realize I haven't read.
So Chris, so what the fuck you haven't read? Come on.
I know, right? I actually read Get Shit Done or Cha-Ching.
Get Shit Done is a great book for this time.
Yes. Oh, no.
I was...
the Getting Your Way one. That's the one.
Yeah. It's really good. It's about how to speak and write.
Nice.
I think it's one of my best ones, actually, because I like how I formatted it and how I'm a writer. Mm-hmm. I'm not an author. I'm a writer. I write every word myself. And I don't type. I use voice to text because I can do 5,000 words in a morning.
Right.
And I couldn't do 5,000 words in a week if I was a typer.
I love that.
So I'm able to dictate and be coherent. Yeah. And after I finish writing, I edit. But sometimes I'll let it sit for a day. Mm-hmm. Or I edit because that allows me to really think it through and get to that next piece and add to whatever I wrote. But the challenge is for most people that they are not on the same plane. They think they got to go make a sales call and they got to do a little research, and they don't do it the right way. My books have been written because of ideas. Mm-hmm. And same way that a salesperson has to go to a customer They have to have an idea, not a slide deck. If I walk in with an idea and you walk in with a slide deck, I'm going to win every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
True. That's true. So let me ask you this. How did you come up with the 0.5 that you do, 21.5 unbreakable laws of selling?
I had a client when I first started doing consulting.
Mm-hmm.
Did a whole thing on time management, and he wanted to get into leadership because he was an officer in the military. So, and I was charging $100 an hour to do consulting. Got it? So that tells you it was 35 years ago. And I said, look, I have an idea for your leadership thing. I said, here are the 8 points of leadership. And instead of a 9, we're going to do 8.5. And the 0.5 is going to be commitment to all the other things that you have is that, it's the glue that holds it together. And he goes, I don't like it. I said, well, okay, then I'll use it myself. And that's it. Literally that. I tried to give it away for $100 and no one would take it. I mean, that's literally made me millions of dollars as a result of using it. Millions.
Nice. I love it. I love it because it does. It gets your attention.
Right. Every time.
Yeah.
Sometimes people skip to the bottom.
Right. I love that. Yeah. So I've heard you had a slightly different take on the shut up part of, a lot of people say, shut up and you'll sell.
Yeah, that's not true. You have to ask for the sale.
Right.
The old strategy was you ask the closing question, and you shut up, and the next person that speaks loses.
Right.
Now, actually, the next person that speaks wins if but I have a different take on shut up. The shut up take is about listening. What is the best way to listen? And people go, it's easy, shut up. No, it's not. The best way to listen is take notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you have that, you have a chance for winning. Until you have that, you have no chance.
Excellent. And what's your take on attribution? Like you say something that I find very cool. I go repeat it. I have somebody interviewed the other day that said, "Oh, I love what you just said. I'm gonna the first 2 times I say it, I'm gonna attribute you. After that, it's mine."
No, that's not true. I as a writer, I will always give an attribution to the name, sometimes the book, sometimes the page, but I go out of my way to be not the president of Harvard University.
That's funny.
How low do you have to go to take somebody else's shit and rewrite it?
Right. Yeah.
That's
pretty low.
That's as low as it gets. I want to share something else that I texted myself today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be goal oriented, be goal directed.
I like that.
So you're walking towards the goal. You're moving to the goal as opposed to writing the goal down and saying it 5 times and that kind of crap. I want you to walk towards the goal and make it happen. And I just could not believe what an aha that was to help people achieve their goals.
Nice. And what does your to-do list look like? Or I should say, what did it look like? Obviously, now it's probably a lot more relaxed. But when you were first starting out, what was your to-do list? Must-do things every day.
Before I go to bed at night, and I still do this, I write down everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I'm thinking about, everything I got to do, and I try to keep it in its own format. I may have to take it and put it in a Google Doc and rearrange it so that I have my to-do list, but I don't go to sleep until my to-do list for the next day is done.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's top of mind. And oftentimes you'll be writing your to-do list, and because you're writing it, other things pop in your mind.
Yeah, yeah.
And you capture those as well. So what I do with my to-do list is it's very rudimentary. It's on my phone. And when I wake up, I have a morning routine, and part of it is read my to-do list. And then during the course of the day, I take action. Some people in California, you can't call somebody in California at 6 a.m.
Right.
because it's 3 in the morning there. So I got to wait until it's civilized. But that's the bottom line for me. I write in a way where I can take action.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be detailed because I kind of know what I got to do.
Right. Right.
And I may jot down a couple of other words just to prompt myself.
Got it. Got it. How can people find out more about you, your books, all that good stuff?
Just go to Gitomer.com, Gitomer.com. And that's everything you need to know.
To say any parting words of wisdom for the audience.
Yeah, I do have parting words of wisdom. Stay away from idiots. There are so many morons in the world today that you have to just focus on you and what you're trying to achieve or trying to accomplish. My friend, the great Daniel Burris, said, in times of uncertainty, document what you're certain of. I added to that, document who you're certain of, and document what you're certain you can achieve. But I'll tell you, I have not been that inspired by a simple sentence in 20 years. In times of uncertainty, document what you're certain of. I mean, how powerful is that?
That's huge. I love that. I love that. Cool. Well, Jeffrey Gitomer, gosh, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to just hang with me. And
it's my damn pleasure, and that's final.
I love it.
But I'm inviting you to be on Sell or Die. Cool. And we'll yak about Friday Night Football in Dallas or Friday Night Football in Texas.
Texas, you bet. That'd be wonderful.